So I've been thinking about the connection between these two facets of reality that I've been calling, on the one hand, ontological pluralism, the plurality of reality, and on the other hand, an aesthetic ontology, and I think an ontology of aesthesis, where sensation is no longer opposed to reality, but in fact we find that the nature of reality is to be an appearance and to appear through a process of metamorphosis and transformation, so that appearances deepen, they reveal their deeper character as you stay with them and as you deepen your sensory awareness, your perception of them, but that you never finally reach, the ideal form or essence that might underlie the appearance or sensation or feeling. So an aesthetic ontology and a pluralistic ontology are related, I think, because generally when we do ontology, we're trying to understand the being of things, or even the being beyond things, since you can't predicate anything of being. Even to say being is already to sort of make it one thing among many things, but the whole point about being is that it's beyond thinghood. It's it's unthinged, which is a literal translation of absolute, German idealist sense of the absolute whole, which, because it is absolute, is no more whole, W-H-O-L-E, than it is whole, H-O-L-E. It's an empty wholeness. It's what Schelling at one point called the indifference point, between one and many, between subject and object, between creator and creature. It's the indifference point. So reality is appearance. There are realities, in other words, which is where it connects to pluralism. If there is no one reality, but reality is an infinite series of appearances, then another way we could describe what I'm getting at here is a sort of perspectivist ontology, something that Nietzsche wrote about late in his life, after the fable of there being two worlds has been unmasked, and after in doing so, appearances are no longer mere appearances. When we don't oppose appearance to reality, then the nature of appearance shifts, right? Because it's not just an image of something else, but the image contains its own ontological ground. Its meaning is internal, and this is why Schelling would write of symbols as not, and myth as not allegorical, in the sense that it's a sort of metaphorical interpretation of some natural event or historical event, but tautogorical, not allegorical, but tautogorical, in the sense of the tautology. Its meaning is self-referential. It's not pointing to something else. It's giving rise, generating meaning out of itself. So the world of appearances is it's a self-generating world. Doesn't depend on something outside of itself as its cause. And Whitehead's ontology is also a sort of perspectivism. What there finally are, what reality is finally composed of, are actual occasions, interlocked in networks of emotional transaction. So that, for example, in the natural sciences, physics is no longer the foundational science, such that chemistry, biology, psychology, theology, etc., would all need to ultimately be reducible to the physical laws of the universe as deciphered by mathematicians and experimentalists, but rather ecology would become the most foundational science. Because what there finally are not laws and particles that obey those laws. What there finally are, even at the level of protons and neutrons and stars and galaxies, that there are organisms in evolving ecologies, co-evolving organisms in ecologies, in other words. And the laws that physics detects and thinks are determining the behavior of the particles actually, in an ecological ontology, which again, it's related to an ontological pluralism, it's related to an aesthetic ontology. In an ecological ontology, the laws arise out of the decisions of organisms in their creative advance while inheriting their own lineages. These organisms are making informed decisions each individually, and certainly, organisms sway one another. Think about human organisms, for example, and how social our psyches are, how susceptible we are to being swayed and persuaded by others. We don't belong to ourselves, not by any stretch of the imagination. And so similarly, hydrogen atoms are swayed by this very strong collective emotional energy called gravity that draws and swirls together clouds of individual hydrogen atoms into stars that then it's like this social urge experienced by hydrogen atoms all of a sudden gives way to a new identity. This astral, this stellar identity emerges, and all of a sudden one is no longer simply a hydrogen atom experience, or a new perspective emerges that's more all-encompassing. And in the same way that even in a panpsychist ontology, it's not like consciousness and intelligence and soul are just spread out evenly everywhere. There's a sort of goop that just drips off of things. There's way more of a differentiated, organized, and in some cases hierarchical patterning here, so that, the star is a deeper form of psyche than the hydrogen atom. has a wider perspective. And so, in the same way that appearances deepen, and not to reveal some hidden core that would be the final real thing, but appearances deepen and reveal ever increasing intensities of beauty. And when the beauty increases, you know that you're moving toward reality, but that's it. Like, reality is only ever something you move towards. You can't arrive. You're always in it. You're always seeing exactly what's there. Which doesn't mean that there aren't hidden aspects of what's there. It just means that to find your way to those hidden aspects, you're always going to be starting where you are. And, even when a physicist is conjuring up some mathematical equation or formula, the truth of the formula